My name is Amanda, 29, and I never thought my wedding day would become a battlefield. The moment I saw my sister Stephanie twirling an my wedding dress at our parents' house, the dress I'd saved for 3 years to buy, my stomach dropped. "Doesn't she look beautiful?" my mother beamed, while my father nodded proudly. They didn't understand why tears welled in my eyes or why I was overreacting. But that was just the beginning. When they suggested Stephanie could be a co-bride at my ceremony, I realized this wasn't just about a dress. It was about a lifetime of invisible competition. Before I get into this unbelievable story, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to join our storytelling family. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this wedding drama unfolds. Growing up, I always knew my place in the family hierarchy. As the oldest daughter, I was expected to be responsible, level-headed, and independent. I got good grades, held down part-time jobs through high school and college, and never caused my parents any trouble. Meanwhile, my younger sister Stephanie, now 26, was the family darling, vivacious, emotional, and somehow always the center of attention. "Stephanie just needs more support," my mother would say whenever I pointed out the disparity in how we were treated. "You're so self-sufficient, Amanda." It became a pattern. I'd achieve something, honor roll, college scholarship, promotion at work, and receive a perfunctory good job. But when Stephanie accomplished anything, no matter how small, my parents threw parties and posted endlessly on social media. Don't get me wrong, I love my sister. But the constant favoritism wore me down over the years. I learned to celebrate my accomplishments privately and lower my expectations for parental approval. I found validation in my own success and in the relationships I built outside my family. That's how I met Jason. 3 years ago, I was working as a marketing manager at a tech company when he joined the sales team. Jason was everything I needed: supportive, understanding, and completely unimpressed by family drama. He saw through my carefully constructed self-sufficiency to the person who still, sometimes, just wanted to be seen. "Your parents have no idea what they're missing," he told me after the first time he witnessed their subtle dismissal of my achievements. We'd been dating 6 months, and I'd just received a major promotion. My parents spent most of the celebratory dinner I'd arranged talking about Stephanie's new apartment. Jason proposed a year and a half later, at the coffee shop where we'd first talked outside of work. It wasn't elaborate or showy, just honest and perfect, like our relationship. He got down on one knee between the pastry case and the cream and sugar station, holding a simple but beautiful emerald ring. He remembered I'd once mentioned preferring colored stones to diamonds. "I don't need a big audience," he said. "I just need you." When I called my parents with the news, my mother's first response was, "Oh. That's unexpected. We thought you two were just getting comfortable." Then, "Have you told Stephanie yet?" "She just broke up with David, so maybe wait a little while." Despite everything, I'd always dreamed of a beautiful wedding. Not extravagant, but meaningful. Jason and I both saved for 3 years, wanting to pay for most of it ourselves. We found a charming venue, a renovated historic building with gardens, and set a date for June 15th. The wedding planning brought all the family dynamics into sharp focus. When I showed my mother the floral arrangements I'd selected, soft blues and purples with silver accents, she frowned. "Stephanie always said she'd have red roses at her wedding. Couldn't you incorporate some red? For family harmony?" I reminded her this was my wedding, not Stephanie's. She sighed as if I was being difficult. Meanwhile, Stephanie was going through another dramatic breakup. She'd been dating Tyler for nearly 2 years, her longest relationship yet, and according to my parents, she was absolutely devastated when he ended things. My mother spent hours on the phone consoling her. My father drove to her apartment with ice cream and stayed to watch movies with her. The family support system mobilized immediately, as it always did for Stephanie. This wasn't unusual. Stephanie had a history of tumultuous relationships that always seemed to intensify or implode around significant events in my life. When I graduated college, she had a pregnancy scare, false alarm. When I got my first promotion, she temporarily moved back home after a breakup. My parents never noticed the pattern, but I certainly did. As the wedding planning continued, Jason became increasingly concerned about how my family treated me. "They do realize this is your wedding, right?" he asked after my mother suggested changing our first dance song to one of Stephanie's favorites because it would cheer her up to hear it. "They're just being themselves," I replied, but even I was reaching my limit. Little did I know, the real test of our family dynamics was yet to come. Finding my wedding dress was the one part of wedding planning I'd looked forward to most. I'd saved $3,500 specifically for the dress, squirreling away a portion of each paycheck for 3 years. I wanted something that made me feel beautiful and special, a feeling I rarely got from my family. The search took months. My best friend Tara came with me to 12 different boutiques across 3 cities. My mother attended the first 2 appointments but kept suggesting styles that would look amazing on Stephanie or commenting that certain dresses were a bit much for your figure, dear. After that, I made excuses for why the appointments couldn't accommodate extra people. When I finally found the dress, I was alone. It was a Thursday evening after work, and I'd stopped into a boutique on a whim. The dress was hanging slightly apart from the others, an A-line silhouette with delicate beading across the bodice, a sweetheart neckline, and a chapel-length train with vintage-inspired lace appliques. The moment I tried it on, I knew. The consultant teared up. A stranger shopping for a mother-of-the-bride dress gasped and said I looked like something from a fairy tale. I bought it immediately, using the money I'd saved. It was slightly over budget at $3,800, but I couldn't imagine wearing anything else. The boutique carefully packed it in a garment bag, and I drove straight to my parents' house to store it there, since my apartment was tiny and had limited closet space. Plus, Jason and I lived together, and I wanted to keep the dress a surprise. My mother was politely appreciative when I showed her, though she did mention the price seemed extravagant for something you'll only wear once. My father barely looked up from his newspaper. I hung the dress in the spare bedroom closet and tried not to feel disappointed by their reaction. 3 weeks later, on a Sunday afternoon, I stopped by my parents' house unannounced. Jason and I had been discussing centerpiece ideas, and I remembered I had a box of potential decorations stored in my old bedroom. I let myself in with my key, calling out as I entered. No one answered, but I heard voices coming from the spare bedroom. I walked down the hallway and pushed open the door. There was Stephanie, standing on a small footstool in front of the full-length mirror, wearing my wedding dress. My mother was kneeling at the hem, pins in her mouth, apparently taking measurements for alterations. My father sat in the corner armchair, nodding approvingly. "It would only need to be taken in a little at the waist," my mother was saying. "And we could add some more beading here to make it pop." I must have made a sound, because they all turned to look at me. For a moment, no one spoke. "Amanda," my mother finally said, as if I was the one who'd been caught doing something wrong. "We didn't expect you today." "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why is Stephanie wearing my wedding dress?" "Oh, she was just trying it on," my mother said dismissively. "Doesn't she look stunning in it? The color really brings out her complexion." My father nodded. "Looks like it was made for her." Stephanie gave a little twirl, the beading catching the light. "It's gorgeous, sis. I can see why you picked it." The casual way they were treating this moment, as if it was perfectly normal for my sister to be wearing the wedding dress I'd saved for years to buy, left me speechless. A hot pressure built behind my eyes. "That's my wedding dress," I finally managed. "The one I spent years saving for." "Why are you altering it for Stephanie?" My mother's expression changed to one of impatience. "Don't be dramatic, Amanda. No one's altering it for her. We were just seeing how it would look with a few changes." "Changes for what?" I demanded, my voice rising. "It's my dress for my wedding." "Stephanie's going through a really tough time right now," my father interjected sternly. Tyler broke her heart. She needed something to cheer her up. "So you let her wear my wedding dress?" The absurdity of it hit me all at once. How would trying on my dress help with her breakup? Stephanie finally spoke, her voice small. I just wanted to feel beautiful for a little while. Is that so terrible? The guilt trip, so familiar, so effective. I'd faced it my entire life. But this time, something in me snapped. Yes, actually, it is terrible, I said, surprising even myself with my firmness. That dress represents years of saving, weeks of searching, and one of the most important days of my life. It's not a costume to make you feel better. My mother stood up, her face flushed. Amanda Jean Davis. I raised you better than to be so selfish. Your sister is hurting, and you're worried about a piece of fabric? A $3,800 piece of fabric that belongs to me, I corrected her. Take it off, Stephanie. Now. You're being materialistic, my father declared, his tone indicating the matter was settled. It's just a dress. Family should come first. Exactly, I agreed. Family should come first. So why doesn't my wedding come first for once? Why is Stephanie's breakup more important than my marriage? Stephanie's face crumpled into the familiar pre-crying expression she'd perfected since childhood. I knew you always resented me, she said, tears forming. I thought you'd understand. Tyler left me for his ex, and I just wanted one nice thing to happen. The emotional manipulation was so transparent, yet my parents immediately shifted into protective mode. Now look what you've done, my mother scolded me. After all the stress she's been under. I'd had enough. Without another word, I walked to the closet, pulled out the empty garment bag, and held it out to Stephanie. Take it off. For a tense moment, I thought she might refuse. Then, with a dramatic sigh, she carefully stepped out of the dress with my mother's help. I inspected it closely for any damage or alterations, relieved to find none. I zipped it securely in its bag. I'm taking this with me, I announced. I'll find somewhere else to store it. You're overreacting, my mother insisted. This is what sisters do. They share things. Not wedding dresses, I replied. Not without asking. I left with my dress, ignoring their calls as I walked to my car. Once inside, I broke down completely, sobbing until my throat hurt. I called Jason, who was furious on my behalf. That's it, he said. We're keeping everything about the wedding away from them from now on. Over the next week, my phone buzzed constantly with messages from my family. My mother sent long paragraphs about how I'd always been too sensitive and how I was driving a wedge through the family. My father's texts were shorter but equally guilt-inducing. Your mother hasn't stopped crying and Stephanie feels terrible thanks to you. I didn't respond to any of them. For the first time in my life, I was putting my own feelings first. A week after the dress incident, my mother called suggesting a family dinner to clear the air. Against Jason's advice, I agreed. Some part of me still hoped for an apology, for recognition that boundaries had been crossed. The dinner was at my parents' favorite restaurant. They arrived first, securing a table in the center of the room, my mother's preference, as she liked to be seen. Stephanie arrived last, making a tearful entrance that turned heads throughout the restaurant. I'm so glad we're all together again, my mother said once we'd ordered. Family is too important for petty disagreements. I waited for the apology that never came. Instead, my father raised his glass in a toast. To understanding and forgiveness, he said pointedly, looking at me. The implication was clear, I was expected to forgive and forget, without anyone acknowledging what they'd done wrong. It was the pattern of my entire life, playing out once again. I'm still waiting to hear someone say they're sorry for trying on my wedding dress without permission, I said quietly. My mother sighed dramatically. Oh, Amanda, still on about the dress? Sisters share clothes all the time. Not wedding dresses, I repeated my earlier point. And not without asking. It wasn't a big deal, Stephanie mumbled, pushing food around her plate. I don't see why you're still making such a fuss. The meal continued in uncomfortable silence. No apology came. Instead, my parents and Stephanie acted as if I was being unreasonable for even expecting one. I left early, declining dessert and making an excuse about work the next day. As I drove home, I realized nothing had changed, and nothing would change unless I forced it to. 2 weeks after the failed reconciliation dinner, my mother called. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. "Amanda, I've been thinking about the wedding," she began, her voice suspiciously cheerful. "I know we got off on the wrong foot with the dress situation, but I have some ideas I'd like to discuss." Cautiously, I agreed to hear her out. "I was thinking Stephanie could be more involved in the ceremony," she continued. "Not just as a bridesmaid, but in a more special role." "What kind of role?" I asked, though I was already getting a bad feeling. "Well," my mother hesitated, then plunged ahead. "What if Stephanie wore a white dress too? Nothing exactly like yours, of course, but something complimentary. You two could walk down the aisle together, or one after the other." I was speechless for a moment. "Are you suggesting Stephanie be a bride at my wedding?" "Not a bride, exactly," my mother corrected quickly. "More like a co-bride. To support you. It would be so unique and special." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, that's not a thing. There's no such thing as a co-bride unless it's a double wedding, and Stephanie isn't even engaged." "That's what would make it so unique," she insisted. "Think of how beautiful the photos would be, two sisters in white." "No," I said firmly. "Absolutely not. This is my wedding to Jason. Stephanie will be a bridesmaid in blue like we already planned." My mother's tone changed, becoming wheedling. "Sweetheart, your sister is going through such a difficult time. Tyler was just spotted with his new girlfriend. Stephanie is devastated. This would mean the world to her." "My wedding isn't therapy for Stephanie's breakup," I replied, trying to stay calm. "I'm sorry she's hurting, but this is completely inappropriate. Your father and I think it would make the day more special for everyone," she continued as if I hadn't spoken. "We were hoping you'd be open to the idea, especially since we're contributing to the wedding financially." And there it was, the subtle reminder of their $5,000 contribution, the implied threat that it could be withdrawn if I didn't cooperate. "I need to go," I said, not trusting myself to continue the conversation. "We can talk about this later." "Just think about it," my mother urged. "If you really loved your sister, you'd want to help her through this difficult time." I hung up and immediately called Jason, who was as incredulous as I was. "They want what?" he exclaimed when I told him. "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard." "I know," I agreed, pacing our small living room. "But they're serious." My mother actually said co-bride with a straight face. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "Say no, obviously. But you know my family. They don't take no for an answer easily." I needed perspective from someone who wasn't directly involved, so I called my best friend Tara that evening. "They've finally lost their minds," she declared after hearing the story. "This goes beyond normal family drama. This is next-level crazy." "Am I overreacting?" I asked, second-guessing myself as I'd been conditioned to do. "Is it really that outrageous?" "Amanda," Tara said firmly, "if you even have to ask that question, it shows how much they've normalized this behavior. Yes, it's completely outrageous. No one has a co-bride at their wedding unless it's their actual fiancé. Your family is trying to hijack your wedding day." Next, I spoke with Jason's mother, Diane, who had always been straightforward and sensible. Her reaction was equally validating. "Honey, that's not normal or reasonable," she assured me. "A wedding is about the couple getting married, not about making someone else feel better about their breakup. You have every right to say no." Armed with this validation, I felt stronger. Jason stood firmly by my side. "Whatever you decide to do, I support you," he said. "But for what it's worth, I think we need to draw a clear line here. If we give in on this, who knows what they'll expect next." He was right. This wasn't just about a wedding, It was about the pattern of my family relationships, one that would continue into our marriage if we didn't address it now. The situation quickly escalated beyond just our immediate family. My mother, apparently not satisfied with my noncommittal response, had mentioned the co-bride idea to several relatives. Soon my phone was lighting up with messages from aunts, uncles, and cousins, some supporting me, others suggesting I consider the idea to keep the peace. My mother's sister, Aunt Karen, called to tell me I was being stubborn just like your mother was at your age. This isn't about stubbornness, I tried to explain. It's about having a normal wedding where I'm the only bride. Family requires compromise, she replied sagely, as if sharing profound wisdom. I've been compromising my entire life, I said. This is where I draw the line. My father's brother, Uncle Dave, was more direct. Your parents are hurt by your attitude, he informed me. They've done everything for you girls, and this is how you repay them? Meanwhile, Stephanie was playing the victim role to perfection. She posted vague, melancholy updates on social media. When you realize family doesn't mean what you thought it did, and some people can only think of themselves, even when you're at your lowest. She didn't name me, but everyone in our circle knew exactly what she was referring to. A few relatives saw through the manipulation. My cousin Rachel called to offer support. I've watched how they treat you compared to Stephanie for years, she said. Don't back down on this. It's your wedding. As the wedding date approached, the tension only grew. What should have been an exciting, joyful time was becoming increasingly stressful. Jason and I found ourselves discussing logistics, like seating arrangements and accommodations for out-of-town guests, with one eye always on how my family might react or interfere. Maybe we should just elope, Jason suggested one night after I'd spent an hour on the phone with yet another concerned relative. We could go to Hawaii, just the two of us. The idea was tempting, but I knew it wasn't the solution. If we run away now, we'll be running away forever, I said. We need to face this head-on. The breaking point came exactly 7 weeks before the wedding. I'd been trying to finalize the reception menu with the caterer when my mother called with just a few small changes she'd promised Stephanie, including replacing our carefully selected appetizers with all of Stephanie's favorites. After hanging up, I burst into tears. Jason found me curled up on our couch, sobbing uncontrollably. I can't do this anymore, I cried. This was supposed to be the happiest time of our lives, and they're ruining it. Jason sat beside me, rubbing my back gently. Maybe we should consider eloping after all, he suggested again. We could still have a small celebration later, but the actual ceremony would be just for us. But that feels like letting them win, I protested. And we've already put down non-refundable deposits. Your mental health is worth more than deposits, Jason said firmly. But if you want to stand your ground, I'm with you. We just need a clear plan. He was right. It was time to take control of the situation once and for all. The next day, I drafted a lengthy email addressed to my parents and Stephanie. I spent hours crafting it, carefully explaining my feelings without accusation, while still being firm about my boundaries. Jason read it over, offering suggestions to strengthen the language where needed. The final version read: Dear Mom, Dad, and Stephanie. I'm writing because I need to clearly communicate my feelings about recent events and discussions regarding our wedding. In-person conversations have become too emotional, so I hope this email allows me to express myself fully. First, I want to say that I love all of you. You're my family, and that's important to me. However, the events of the past few weeks, from the incident with my wedding dress to the suggestion that Stephanie be a co-bride, have been deeply hurtful and inappropriate. My wedding day is about celebrating the commitment between Jason and me. It is not an opportunity to help Stephanie feel better about her breakup, showcase her to potential new partners, or create a sisters event. While I sympathize with Stephanie's pain, using my wedding as emotional therapy for her is unfair to Jason and me. Moving forward, these are my non-negotiable expectations. 1. Stephanie will participate as a bridesmaid in the blue dress we originally selected. No white, ivory, cream, or any shade that could be confused with bridal attire. 2. The wedding plans Jason and I have made will be respected. No last-minute changes, additions, or surprises. 3. Any further discussions about making Stephanie a co-bride or giving her a special role beyond bridesmaid will result in her being removed from the wedding party entirely. I hope you can understand and respect these boundaries. If not, Jason and I will need to reconsider your involvement in our wedding day. I'd appreciate a response acknowledging that you understand and accept these terms. Love. Amanda. I hit send before I could second-guess myself, then turned off my phone. Jason and I went for a long walk in the park, trying to distract ourselves while waiting for the inevitable fallout. When we returned home 3 hours later, I turned my phone back on to find exactly what I'd expected, a storm of notifications. My mother had called 17 times and left 8 voicemails, each more tearful than the last. The final one simply featured her sobbing and saying, "How could you do this to us?" My father's response was a terse text message, "Your mother is beside herself. Call immediately." Stephanie had taken to social media again with a new post, "When the knife in your back is twisted by someone who's supposed to love you most." She'd also sent me a private message consisting solely of crying emojis. The most concerning message, however, was an email from my father. "Given your attitude, your mother and I are reconsidering our financial contribution to the wedding." Family works both ways, Amanda. I showed Jason the messages, my hands shaking. "They're trying to pull the money to force me to comply." "Let them," he said resolutely. "We'll figure it out without their contribution. This is about control, and we're not giving it to them." Over the next few days, the responses continued to pour in. My mother called crying at all hours. My father left increasingly stern voicemails. Stephanie alternated between angry texts and pleading ones. Extended family members were recruited to talk sense into me. Through it all, Jason and I stood firm. We sat down with our wedding budget and figured out how to proceed without my parents' $5,000. We'd need to cut back on some things, simplify the floral arrangements, choose a less expensive menu option, forego the custom cocktails, but the core of our wedding would remain intact. Friends stepped up in remarkable ways. Tara offered to handle more of the decoration herself instead of hiring help. Jason's cousin, a talented baker, volunteered to make our cake as her gift. Colleagues surprised us with a special wedding fund collection. While dealing with the practical aspects, I also started seeing a therapist, Dr. Melissa, to help navigate the emotional toll. In our sessions, I began to understand the patterns that had defined my family relationships for decades. "What you're describing sounds like a combination of favoritism and emotional manipulation," Dr. Melissa explained during our second session. "Your parents have positioned Stephanie as the fragile one who needs extra attention, while casting you as the strong one who doesn't need support." "That's exactly it," I said, feeling validated. "They expect me to always give way to her needs. And when you don't," Dr. Melissa continued, "they use guilt, financial leverage, and family pressure to make you comply. These are classic manipulation tactics." We worked on strategies for maintaining boundaries while managing the anxiety these confrontations triggered. Dr. Melissa helped me recognize when I was falling into old patterns of people-pleasing and self-doubt. "Remember," she told me, "setting healthy boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for healthy relationships." Armed with these insights and coping strategies, I felt stronger each day. The wedding was now just 5 weeks away, and while my family situation remained unresolved, I was beginning to feel hopeful about our special day again. 3 weeks before the wedding, I received an unexpected call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a familiar voice greeted me. "Amanda? It's your grandmother." My heart leapt. Grandmother Barbara was my father's mother, a straightforward, no-nonsense woman who lived in Arizona. At 78, she rarely traveled, and I hadn't expected her to attend the wedding due to her health concerns. "Grandma. It's so good to hear your voice," I said genuinely. "I'm in town," she announced without preamble. "I'd like to see you." "Alone. Can you meet me at the Lakeside Hotel downtown? I'm in room 512. Curious and a little apprehensive, I agreed. An hour later, I was knocking on her hotel room door. Grandmother Barbara answered immediately, looking much as she always had, silver hair neatly styled, posture straight despite her age, sharp blue eyes missing nothing. She hugged me tightly, then held me at arm's length to examine me. "You look tired," she declared. "But that's to be expected with all this nonsense going on." She ushered me inside and motioned for me to sit on one of the armchairs by the window. She settled across from me, smoothing her skirt. "I've heard about the circus your wedding has become," she said directly. "Your cousin Rachel called me." She was concerned. My face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm sorry you had to hear about all that." "Don't apologize," she cut me off firmly. "You've done nothing wrong. I wanted to talk to you privately before I see your parents." For the next hour, Grandmother Barbara listened as I poured out the whole story, not just the recent wedding drama, but the lifetime of dynamics that had led to this point. She nodded occasionally, her expression thoughtful. When I finished, she sighed deeply. "History repeats itself," she said, almost to herself. "What do you mean?" "Your mother and her sister had the same dynamic growing up," she revealed. "Your Aunt Claire was always the dramatic one, the one who needed extra attention. Your mother was the steady, responsible one who got overlooked." This was news to me. Mom never talks about her childhood much. "No, she wouldn't," Grandmother Barbara nodded. "It was painful for her. Your grandfather and I didn't realize what was happening until it was too late to correct it easily. Your mother left home as soon as she could, determined to create a different life. But she's recreated the same pattern with me and Stephanie," I said, realization dawning. "Often, we repeat what we know, even when we intend to do the opposite," my grandmother said wisely. "Your mother probably doesn't even see that she's favoring Stephanie the way her parents favored Claire. She likely thinks she's being supportive of a child who needs extra help, just as she once needed but didn't receive." This perspective was illuminating but didn't excuse the behavior. "Understanding why she does it doesn't make it hurt less," I said quietly. "Of course not," Grandmother Barbara agreed. "Understanding is just the first step. Setting boundaries is the next, and you've already begun that process." She reached across and patted my hand. "I'm proud of you for that." She shifted in her chair, her expression becoming more businesslike. "Now, about your wedding. I understand your parents threatened to withdraw their financial support?" I nodded, still feeling the sting of that threat. "That won't be a problem anymore," she announced. "I'm covering their contribution, plus a bit extra. No strings attached. This is your wedding, not a stage for family drama." I was speechless for a moment. "Grandma, that's incredibly generous, but it's a lot of money." "I have the means," she waved away my concern. "And I'd rather spend it on something meaningful than leave it all for your father and uncle to squabble over when I'm gone." Her matter-of-fact generosity brought tears to my eyes. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," she replied. "Just have the wedding you and Jason want." "But there's more to discuss." Grandmother Barbara went on to share insights into our family history that I'd never known. She revealed patterns of favoritism and competition that stretched back generations. She told me how my father had been the favored child in his family, while his brother was often overlooked, creating a blind spot that made it difficult for him to see when the same pattern emerged with his daughters. "Family patterns run deep," she explained. "Breaking them requires awareness and deliberate action." After our lengthy conversation, she announced her next step. "I'm having dinner with your parents tonight. I've already called and insisted. They don't know I've spoken to you." "What are you going to say to them?" I asked nervously. "I'm going to speak plainly, as I always have," she said firmly. "Some things need to be said, and I'm at an age where I don't have time for nonsense." I left feeling lighter than I had in months, bolstered by my grandmother's support and insights. Jason was amazed when I told him about her intervention. "Your grandmother sounds incredible," he said. "Do you think she'll get through to them?" If anyone can, it's her, I replied. She's the only person my father has ever really listened to. The next morning, I received a brief text from my grandmother. Dinner was productive. Expect a call. Sure enough, my phone rang an hour later. It was my mother, her voice subdued. Your grandmother suggested we meet to talk, she said, no trace of her usual commanding tone. Just the four of us, you, me, your father, and Stephanie. No Jason, no extended family. Would tomorrow afternoon work? I agreed, curious about what my grandmother had said to create this shift. Later that evening, I called her to ask. I simply told them the truth, she said. That they were on the verge of losing their relationship with their daughter over foolishness. That I had witnessed their favoritism for years and said nothing, to my shame. That if they proceeded on this path, they would regret it for the rest of their lives. She paused. I also mentioned that I know quite a bit about their financial situation that they might prefer to keep private. You threatened them? I was shocked. I gave them perspective, she corrected mildly. Sometimes people need to understand the real stakes. Whatever she'd said, it had clearly made an impact. The next day, my parents and Stephanie arrived at the neutral meeting location, a private room at a local restaurant that my grandmother had arranged. Stephanie looked sullen, my mother appeared nervous, and my father was uncharacteristically quiet. Without grandmother Barbara present, I worried the conversation might devolve into the usual pattern, but something had definitely changed. Your grandmother had some insights to share with us, my father began awkwardly. She suggested we'd been unfair to you. My mother nodded, not quite meeting my eyes. We've been thinking about what she said. About patterns and how they affect families. Stephanie remained silent, examining her fingernails. We want to support your wedding, my father continued. As you planned it. The contribution stands, no conditions. And the co-bride idea? I pressed, needing absolute clarity. That was inappropriate, my mother admitted, the words seeming to cause her physical pain. Your wedding should be about you and Jason. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was progress. Stephanie finally looked up. I'm sorry about the dress, she said flatly. I shouldn't have tried it on without asking. The words were right, but the sincerity was questionable. Still, it was more acknowledgement than I'd expected. Thank you, I said, deciding to accept what was offered. I appreciate that. The conversation continued cautiously, with my parents making visible efforts to listen more than they spoke. We established clear guidelines for the remaining wedding preparations, and they agreed to respect our decisions without further interference. As we prepared to leave, my mother hesitantly asked, will Barbara be involved in the wedding planning from now on? I understood the real question, whether my grandmother would be watching them, ready to step in if they reverted to old patterns. Grandma is focusing on her health, I said diplomatically. But she'll definitely be at the wedding. The implied message was clear, behave yourself, or Grandma will know. As I drove home, I reflected on how one person's intervention had shifted the dynamic so dramatically. Grandmother Barbara had accomplished in one dinner what I'd been trying to achieve for years. With renewed hope, I returned to wedding preparations, cautiously optimistic that we might actually have the celebration we'd envisioned. The 2 weeks following the family meeting were surprisingly peaceful. My parents maintained a respectful distance from the wedding planning, responding positively when consulted but offering no unsolicited suggestions. Stephanie had been notably absent from family communications, which was both a relief and slightly concerning. As we approached the rehearsal dinner, scheduled for 2 nights before the wedding, tensions began to creep back in. My mother called with increasing frequency, each conversation starting with wedding logistics but eventually drifting to comments about Stephanie. She's been so quiet lately, my mother fretted during one call. I'm worried about her emotional state for the wedding. Has she said something specific about the wedding? I asked cautiously. No, but you know how she internalizes things, my mother replied. I just want to make sure everything goes smoothly for everyone. The subtle pressure was returning, but I was better equipped to handle it now. I'm sure Stephanie will be fine, I said firmly. She's an adult, and this is one weekend where the focus needs to be elsewhere. My mother made a non-committal sound but didn't push further. The day before the rehearsal dinner, I received a text from my cousin Emily that made my blood run cold. Call me ASAP. It's about Stephanie. Emily had always been a straight shooter who refused to get involved in family drama, so her message alarmed me. I called her immediately. I thought you should know, she said without preamble. Stephanie bought a white dress for your wedding. What? I nearly dropped my phone. How do you know? She posted pictures of it on her private Instagram account, the one just for close friends. I took screenshots. Emily paused. Your parents are tagged in the post. They've seen it. Send me the screenshots, I said, my voice tight. The images arrived seconds later. There was Stephanie, posing in a floor-length white gown with a sweetheart neckline and lace overlay, undeniably bridal in style. The caption read, "Something special for a special day." My parents had both liked the post. My mother had commented with heart emojis and beautiful. Can't wait. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. After all the discussions, all the boundaries set, they were still going ahead with the co-bride plan, just more secretively. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, Emily said quietly. But I thought you should know before the rehearsal tomorrow. Thank you, I managed. I appreciate you telling me. I showed the screenshots to Jason, who exploded in anger. That's it, he declared. They're uninvited. All of them. We'll get married with just our friends and my family. No, I said, surprising myself with my calmness. That's what they want, for me to be the unreasonable one who creates drama. We're going to handle this differently. I called my parents and Stephanie, requesting an emergency family meeting that evening. Everyone needs to be there, I insisted. This isn't optional. They agreed, sounding suspiciously innocent. We arranged to meet at my parents' house at 7 p.m. When I arrived with Jason, my grandmother Barbara was already there, a surprise reinforcement I hadn't expected but was grateful for. She sat regally in my father's favorite armchair, giving me a subtle nod as we entered. My parents looked uncomfortable. Stephanie affected an air of confusion. What's this emergency about? My father asked gruffly. Without a word, I took out my phone and displayed the Instagram screenshots on the TV via Chromecast. The image of Stephanie in the white dress filled the screen, along with her caption and my parents' approving responses. The room fell silent. Would someone like to explain this? I asked quietly. My mother recovered first. It's just a dress Stephanie was trying on, she stammered. She wasn't actually going to. Don't lie, Grandmother Barbara interrupted sharply. The caption makes the intention perfectly clear. Stephanie's face flushed. It's not even pure white, she protested. It's more of an eggshell or cream. It's a wedding dress, I stated flatly. After all our discussions, all your promises to respect my wishes, you're still planning to show up to my wedding in a bridal gown. My father attempted to take control of the situation. Now, let's all calm down. I'm sure we can work something out that makes everyone happy. No, I said firmly. There is no working something out. This is my wedding. There is one bride, me. Anyone who shows up in a white dress will be turned away at the door. I've already spoken to the venue security. This was a bluff, but they didn't need to know that. You wouldn't really turn away your own sister, my mother gasped. Try me, I challenged. This has gone far beyond a simple family disagreement. This is deliberate sabotage of my wedding day. Grandmother Barbara cleared her throat. I think it's time for some honesty in this family. She turned to Stephanie. Young lady, why are you so determined to share the spotlight at your sister's wedding? Stephanie's carefully constructed facade cracked. Because she always gets everything, she burst out, tears forming. She's the perfect one, the responsible one, the successful one with the perfect fiancé and the perfect life. Everyone thinks she's so amazing, even though I'm the one who needs help." The raw emotion in her voice was startling. She continued, her words tumbling out rapidly. "I've been planning ways to make sure people notice me at the wedding," she admitted. "The white dress was just part of it. I was going to give an unscheduled toast, and I convinced the DJ to play a special song for me to dance to." She looked down, avoiding our eyes. "I've been sabotaging little things too, calling vendors to change details, telling the florist the color scheme had been updated." I was stunned by the extent of her interference. "Why would you do all that?" "Because it's not fair," Stephanie cried. "You have everything together, and I'm a mess. Tyler left me for his ex because he said I was too much drama. My job is going nowhere. I'm almost 27 and still need help paying my rent. Meanwhile, you're getting married to a great guy who adores you, you have a successful career, and everyone respects you." The room fell silent as her words hung in the air. For the first time, I saw past my sister's behavior to the pain and insecurity driving it. "Stephanie," I said gently, "do you really think I have everything together? Do you have any idea how hard I've worked for every bit of stability in my life? How many times I've felt invisible in this family while everyone rushed to support you?" She looked up, confusion crossing her face. "What are you talking about? Mom and Dad always brag about you to their friends." "To their friends, maybe. But never to me." I turned to my parents. "Did you know I cried in my car after you barely acknowledged my promotion last year? Or that when I called to tell you about my engagement, Mom, your first response was to tell me to wait to tell Stephanie because she'd just broken up with David?" My mother had the grace to look embarrassed. "I didn't realize." "No, you didn't," I agreed. "Because you've been so focused on making sure Stephanie gets extra attention and support that you never considered I might need some too." Grandmother Barbara nodded approvingly. "This is exactly what I was talking about," she said to my parents. Patterns repeating themselves. My father looked genuinely bewildered. "We thought you were fine," he said to me. "You've always been so capable." "Being capable doesn't mean I don't need support or acknowledgement," I explained. "It just means I learned to hide my disappointment when I didn't get it." Stephanie was staring at me with new awareness. "I always thought you had it easy," she said slowly. "That everything came naturally to you." "Nothing came easily," I told her. "I just stopped expecting help or recognition, so I figured out how to do things on my own." The atmosphere in the room had shifted from confrontational to something more reflective. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "I never intended to favor one of you over the other," she said quietly. "I was just trying to give more support where I thought it was needed." "I know," I acknowledged. "But the impact was still harmful, regardless of the intention." Grandmother Barbara stood up, commanding attention without saying a word. "So," she said briskly, "the question now is, where do we go from here? The wedding is in 3 days." All eyes turned to Stephanie, who looked uncharacteristically subdued. "I'll return the dress tomorrow," she said finally. "And I'll tell the DJ to stick to the original playlist." She hesitated. "If you still want me as a bridesmaid, I'll wear the blue dress we picked out." "I do want that," I said truthfully. "I've always wanted a good relationship with you, Stephanie. I just needed it to be fair." My parents exchanged glances, then my father spoke. "We have some work to do as a family," he admitted. "But right now, the priority is making sure Amanda and Jason have the wedding they've planned and deserve." For the first time in memory, it felt like my needs were being prioritized within my family. It was a strange but welcome feeling. As we prepared to leave, Stephanie approached me hesitantly. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Just the two of us." I nodded, curious about what she wanted to say without our parents present. "Tomorrow," I suggested. "Let's meet for coffee in the morning." She agreed, and we parted with cautious optimism that perhaps this crisis had created an opportunity for genuine change. The night before my wedding should have been filled with last-minute preparations and excited anticipation. Instead, I found myself lying awake in my hotel room, replaying the events of the past few months in my mind. Jason was staying in another room. We'd decided to observe the tradition of not seeing each other before the ceremony, mostly to give ourselves a little space for reflection. Around midnight, I heard a soft knock at my door. Thinking it might be Tara or another bridesmaid with a wedding emergency, I wrapped myself in the hotel robe and peered through the peephole. To my surprise, Stephanie stood in the hallway, clearly distressed. Her eyes were red and puffy, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, a far cry from her usually meticulous appearance. I opened the door cautiously. "Stephanie? Is everything okay? Can I come in?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "I really need to talk to you." I hesitated briefly, then stepped aside to let her in. She entered and stood awkwardly in the middle of the room, looking smaller and younger than her 26 years. "I couldn't sleep," she admitted. "I keep thinking about everything, the dress, the wedding, our whole relationship. I owe you an explanation, and an apology. A real one this time." I gestured for her to sit on one of the armchairs by the window while I took the other. Outside, the city glittered with late-night lights, oblivious to our family drama. "I'm listening," I said simply. Stephanie took a deep, shuddering breath. "I'm so sorry, Amanda. For everything. The dress, the co-bride nonsense, the sabotage, all of it." Her voice cracked. "I've been terrible to you, and you didn't deserve any of it." The raw sincerity in her voice was unlike anything I'd heard from her before. This wasn't the performative emotion she typically displayed for our parents' benefit. "What I said yesterday about being jealous of you, that barely scratches the surface," she continued. "The truth is, I've always felt like I'm living in your shadow. You're so together. So competent and independent. I've never felt that way about myself." "I don't understand," I said gently. "You've always been the center of attention in our family." "Because I created drama to get it," she admitted, looking down at her hands. "I learned early on that being loud and emotional got me attention. Being sick or sad or in crisis meant people focused on me. It was the only way I knew how to get noticed." She looked up, tears streaming down her face. "But you know what? It's exhausting. Being the fragile one, the dramatic one, it's become my whole identity. And somewhere along the way, I started believing it myself. That I can't handle things, that I need rescuing." I was stunned by her self-awareness. "I had no idea you felt this way." "I didn't either, not consciously," she said. "After yesterday, I couldn't sleep. I stayed up all night thinking about our relationship, about the patterns Grandma mentioned. And I realized something terrible: I've been sabotaging you my entire life." "Sabotaging me?" I echoed. She nodded miserably. "Whenever you had something important happening, I'd create some crisis to steal the attention. Your high school graduation, I had that huge fight with my boyfriend the night before. Your college scholarship celebration, I accidentally sprained my ankle. Your promotion dinner, I showed up devastated about a breakup." I remembered all these incidents vividly, but I'd never connected them as a pattern. "It wasn't conscious at first," Stephanie continued. "But by the time you got engaged, it had become almost automatic. Tyler actually broke up with me because he noticed the pattern. He said I was creating unnecessary drama, especially around your milestones." "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Because I'm tired of being this person," she said simply. "I'm tired of defining myself by how much attention and help I can get. I want to be someone who can celebrate your happiness without feeling threatened by it." Her words hung in the air between us, unexpectedly profound. "Do you remember when we were kids?" she asked suddenly. "Before all this competition started?" I cast my mind back to our early childhood. "We used to build blanket forts in the living room," I recalled with a small smile. "And put on shows for Mom and Dad. You always let me have the starring role," Stephanie remembered. Even though you were older and knew all the lines better. You were a natural performer, I shrugged. It made sense. No, you were being kind, she corrected me. You were always kind, Amanda. Even when I wasn't. Especially when I wasn't. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of years of misunderstanding between us. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, Stephanie said finally. But I wanted you to know that I understand what I've been doing. And I'm going to work on changing it, not just for the wedding, but permanently. That means a lot to me, I said honestly. And for what it's worth, I've never thought of you as incapable or fragile. I've always admired your social ease, your ability to connect with people, your creativity. She looked surprised. Really? Really, I confirmed. We have different strengths, Stephanie. That doesn't mean one of us is better than the other. I'd like to believe that, she said quietly. I'd like to try being sisters again. Real sisters who support each other. I'd like that too, I replied, feeling a cautious hope bloom. Stephanie stood up awkwardly. I should let you get some sleep. Big day tomorrow. Wait, I said impulsively. I was going to finish the wedding favors tonight. Do you want to help? Just like old times, staying up late, working on a project together? Her face lit up with genuine pleasure. I'd love that. For the next few hours, we sat cross-legged on the hotel room floor, tying ribbons around small boxes of chocolates and attaching thank you tags. We talked more openly than we had in years, about our childhood memories, our different perspectives on family events, our hopes and fears. Somewhere around 3 a.m., Stephanie confessed that she'd been terrified of losing our parents' attention once I was married. I think I've been their project for so long, she explained. I was afraid that without the Stephanie needs help narrative, they wouldn't know how to relate to me. Maybe it's time for all of us to develop new ways of relating to each other, I suggested. Healthier ones. We kept working and talking until the boxes were finished. By then, it was nearly 4 a.m., and exhaustion had caught up with us. Stephanie curled up on the small sofa, too tired to return to her own room, while I stretched out on the bed. Amanda, she murmured sleepily. Thank you for not giving up on me. I smiled in the darkness. That's what sisters are for. When Jason knocked on my door at 7 a.m., concerned that I wasn't answering my phone, he found both of us fast asleep amid scattered ribbon scraps and completed wedding favors. The sight of us, Stephanie awkwardly draped across the too small sofa, me with my arm flung over my eyes to block the morning light, made him laugh out loud, waking us both. Should I be concerned that my bride is having sleepovers the night before our wedding? He teased. Family emergency, I yawned, sitting up. Of the good kind, for once. Stephanie rubbed her eyes, looking disoriented but peaceful. I should go get ready, she said, standing up. Lots to do today. As she headed for the door, she paused and turned back. I meant everything I said last night, she told me earnestly. Today is about you and Jason. I promise. After she left, Jason raised his eyebrows questioningly. Everything okay? I think, I said slowly, that for the first time in a very long time, it might actually be. The morning of the wedding was a whirlwind of activity. My hotel suite had been transformed into a preparation headquarters, with my bridesmaids, hairstylist, makeup artist, and photographer all buzzing around in organized chaos. Tara, my maid of honor, managed the schedule with military precision, ensuring everyone was where they needed to be at the right time. Hair at 9, makeup at 10:30, dress at 11:45, photos at 12:15, she recited, checking items off her clipboard. When Stephanie arrived at 9:30, right on time for her hair appointment, she was carrying a garment bag containing her blue bridesmaid dress, exactly as planned. No white dress in sight. I brought coffee for everyone, she announced, setting down a carrier of cups. And I have a surprise for you, Amanda. She handed me a small gift bag. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with 2 interlocking circles. Engraved on the inside were the words sisters by birth, friends by choice. It's beautiful, I said, genuinely touched. I saw it months ago and bought it for your birthday, Stephanie admitted. But it seemed more appropriate today. As the morning progressed, I was struck by how different Stephanie's behavior was. She helped other bridesmaids with their hair, stepped in when the florist delivered the wrong boutonnieres, and most remarkably, stayed completely in the background, supporting without trying to be the center of attention. My parents arrived around 11, knocking tentatively on the suite door. My mother looked nervous, clutching her purse tightly. My father stood slightly behind her, his expression a mixture of discomfort and determination. You look beautiful, my mother said, her voice catching. Truly beautiful. Thank you, I replied, suddenly emotional myself. We wanted to give you something, my father said, stepping forward. He handed me a small velvet box. Inside was a pair of sapphire earrings that perfectly matched my engagement ring. They were your great-grandmother's, my mother explained. We've been saving them for a special occasion. The gesture was surprisingly thoughtful, acknowledging my preference for colored stones over diamonds, respecting my personal style rather than imposing their own. They're perfect, I said, putting them on immediately. My father cleared his throat awkwardly. We haven't always been attentive to what you wanted, he said, the admission clearly difficult for him. But we're trying to do better. Starting today, my mother added firmly. As I prepared to walk down the aisle on my father's arm, I felt a sense of calm that had been absent for months. The ceremony venue, a historic building with soaring windows and wooden beams, was decorated exactly as Jason and I had envisioned, with arrangements of blue and purple flowers, silver accents, and thousands of tiny fairy lights. Jason waited at the altar, his face lighting up when he saw me. Behind him stood his groomsmen, and across from them, my bridesmaids in their blue dresses, Stephanie among them, smiling genuinely. In the front row sat grandmother Barbara, elegant in pale blue, looking supremely satisfied with the proceedings. The ceremony was everything we'd hoped for, personal, meaningful, and focused entirely on our commitment to each other. We exchanged the vows we'd written ourselves, promising to support each other's dreams, to communicate honestly, and to build a partnership based on mutual respect. For the unity ceremony, we'd chosen something a bit unusual. Instead of the traditional candle lighting, we had a small tree planting. Jason and I each added soil to a potted sapling, symbolizing our growing life together. Then, in a last-minute addition, we invited our parents to add soil as well, acknowledging that family relationships, though sometimes complicated, were still part of our foundation. My parents looked surprised but pleased at the inclusion. As my mother stepped forward to add her scoop of soil, she whispered, "Thank you for letting us be part of this." The reception that followed was lively and joyful. Jason and I had our first dance to the song we'd chosen, not Stephanie's suggestion. The dinner featured the menu we'd selected. The toasts went according to the schedule we'd approved. And then, unexpectedly, Stephanie approached the DJ and whispered something. He nodded and handed her the microphone. My heart sank momentarily. Was this the beginning of the sabotage again? Stephanie tapped the microphone gently to get everyone's attention. The room quieted as she took a deep breath. I wasn't scheduled to give a toast today, she began, and I promise I'll be brief. But I couldn't let this day pass without saying something important. She turned to face Jason and me at the head table. Amanda has been not just a sister to me, but a role model, though I haven't always acknowledged that. For years, I'd been, let's say, difficult. This earned a knowing chuckle from family members. I've created drama, demanded attention, and frankly, been a bit of a nightmare during the wedding planning. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the guests who weren't familiar with the behind-the-scenes tensions. But recently, I've realized something important, Stephanie continued. True love isn't about being the center of attention. It's about celebrating the happiness of people you care about. It's about wanting the best for them, even when it doesn't involve you. She raised her glass. So today, I want to toast my amazing sister and her equally amazing new husband. Amanda and Jason, you two show what real partnership looks like, supporting each other, respecting each other, and bringing out the best in each other. I'm so grateful to witness your love, and I promise to be a better sister and sister-in-law going forward. She paused, then added with a smile, and I promise never to try on your clothes without asking again. The room erupted in laughter and applause. I found myself wiping away tears as Jason squeezed my hand under the table. After the toast, Stephanie approached us with an envelope. "One more thing," she said, handing it to Jason. "A proper wedding gift." Inside were 2 first-class tickets to Bali, the dream honeymoon destination we'd mentioned once but had decided was beyond our budget. "Stephanie, this is too much," I protested, knowing her financial situation. "I've been saving too," she said simply. "For something that mattered." The rest of the reception passed in a blur of dancing, cake cutting, and celebrations. At one point, I noticed my parents speaking earnestly with Jason's parents, a conversation that seemed to be going well, judging by the smiles and nodding. Later, as Jason and I were making the rounds to thank guests, my parents pulled me aside for a private moment. "We want you to know how proud we are of you," my father said, his voice gruff with emotion. "Not just today, but always." "We haven't always shown it well," my mother admitted. "But we've always felt it." "I know," I said, realizing as I spoke that I finally believed it. "And I love you both." "We'd like to do better going forward," my father continued. "Your grandmother suggested that maybe family therapy might help us all communicate better." Coming from my traditionally stoic father, this was nothing short of revolutionary. "I think that's a wonderful idea," I agreed, genuinely touched by their willingness to change. 6 months after the wedding, Jason and I had settled into married life in our new apartment, slightly larger than our previous place, with an actual closet for my clothes. The sapphire from Bali sat on our mantel, a reminder of our perfect honeymoon. The changes in my family dynamic had proven surprisingly enduring. Once a month, we all met for a family therapy session with Dr. Melissa, who helped us navigate the complex process of establishing healthier patterns. Progress wasn't always linear, old habits occasionally resurfaced, especially during stressful times, but the overall trajectory was positive. My parents were making conscious efforts to treat Stephanie and me more equitably. Stephanie, for her part, was working on building an identity that didn't revolve around drama or neediness. She'd started taking evening classes toward a business degree and had recently been promoted at work. Most significantly, Stephanie and I were slowly rebuilding our relationship as sisters. We met for coffee every other week, just the two of us, creating space to know each other as adults rather than rivals. "I'm thinking about cutting my hair short," Stephanie mentioned during one of these coffee dates. "What do you think?" "I think you'd look great with short hair," I replied honestly. "Your face shape would really suit it." "I'm nervous about the change," she admitted. "But I feel like it's time to try something new." "Change can be good," I agreed, thinking of how much had shifted in our lives over the past year. "Speaking of change," Stephanie said, smiling mischievously. "How would you feel about being an aunt someday?" "Are you?" I began, surprised. No, she laughed. "Not yet. But I've been seeing someone for a couple months now. It's going really well. His name is Michael, and he's different. Calmer. More mature than the guys I usually date." "I'd love to meet him," I said genuinely. "I was thinking we could have dinner next week? You, me, Jason, and Michael?" "That sounds perfect," I agreed. As we continued chatting about her new relationship and various other topics, I reflected on how far we'd come. The wedding dress incident, as dramatic and painful as it had been, had ultimately forced our family to confront long-standing issues that might otherwise have festered indefinitely. Sometimes, I realized, the most beautiful beginnings could arise from the most challenging conflicts. My wedding had become not just the beginning of my marriage to Jason, but the beginning of a healthier, more authentic relationship with my entire family. And that was perhaps the most unexpected and precious gift of all. So, what would you have done in my situation? Would you have stood your ground or given in to keep the peace? Have you ever had to deal with family drama around a big life event? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you so much for listening, and remember that setting healthy boundaries with family isn't selfish, it's necessary for everyone's well-being. Until next time.